I am wondering if you've noticed that life has a tendency to throw curveballs. I definitely have noticed it in my life. And the yogic path is asking us, can we stay steady when those curveballs are coming at us? Can we stay centered in the midst of the unexpected storms? Welcome to your Monday message. I am Dharma Shakti, your host, with your weekly dose of something inspirational, where I am blending ancient spiritual yogic wisdom with modern day practices. So let's unpack this verse today from the Bhagavad Gītā. This comes from chapter 2, verse 48. And I'm focusing on a small portion of this verse, but I want to read to you the whole verse here. So the verse is from my very well used Bhagavad Gītā here. So what does this verse mean? This verse is translated as, perform your duty, O Arjuna, equipoised. Abandoning all attachment to success or failure, such equanimity is called yoga. So here in this verse, Krishna is telling Arjuna, just go and do your duty equipoised. We'll unpack this word in a minute here. And abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Be equipoised. And such equanimity is called yoga. He's defining a real world application. Like when we're not doing our meditation practices, when we're not doing our rituals that help us connect to divinity, what does yoga look like in our day-to-day lives? What does it look like in our real human experiences? And Krishna is telling Arjuna outright, when you live with equanimity, when you go out into the world and you live your life without attachment to success or failure, but you do that from a place of centeredness, or this word equanimity, Samatvam, Krishna says, this is yoga. So let's just unpack the last portion of this verse. Samatvam yoga ucyate. Samatvam means equanimity or balance, or really, and a more authentic translation is sama means like a same, and vam in the self. So there's a sameness in the self. It really means to be established in that sameness, rather than pulled out into the polarization or the opposites or the paradoxes or the dichotomies of I'm either happy or sad. But this place of center, sama, sameness. Okay, and yoga, union, and ucyate is said to be or is called. So a simple explanation of this last portion of this verse is really that yoga is not just about flexibility of body, it's about flexibility of mind. Can we stay centered in all conditions? Our yoga practice on our mat allows us to practice that in real time in a place and an environment that is very safe. When you're doing that really difficult warrior two pose for a lot longer than you want to, and the teacher says, let's take 5 more deep breaths, can you stay in that sameness and that centeredness instead of being pulled out into the edges of either panic or frustration, or I'm not enough, so I'm going to give up, or I'm crushing this pose, I'm so amazing. Those are the edges, the extremes that we get pulled out into. And these are sort of the natural occurrences of life. This spectrum of life, right? We experience a spectrum of things, happiness and sadness. And there's a whole spectrum in between. And it's not, yoga isn't asking us that we don't feel the frustration, or that we don't feel the sadness, or that we don't get to enjoy the happiness. It's asking that as we are experiencing those things, can we stay in that sameness, in that centeredness, or in that equanimity? So let's talk a little bit about equanimity and this idea of not being attached to success or failure, but walking in that centeredness. I know we hear this word a lot, centeredness, but I want to dial in and really hone in on this word equanimity. I don't think that's a word that we use often in our culture. So I want to bring some education and some awareness around it. So equanimity, what does that mean, and why? Why do we want to strive for equanimity? Okay? So let me just go through these key points here, and we'll unpack it a little bit more as we go. Equanimity equals inner balance amidst the change. Think of, I guess the best example I can imagine is like Lady Liberty. You know, the statue, she's blindfolded and she's holding the scales. And just imagine that you're not blindfolded, you're not Lady Liberty, but you're holding scales. And, you know, life is putting on the stress of succeeding in your career, and life is putting on the pressure of maintaining that healthy relationship. Life is adding to this one plate over here of really taking care of your physical health, and life is adding a little bit of weight over here around we have to achieve a certain amount in order to feel validated in the world. And the scales are, every time we add something, the scale is tipping. And our job is to hold in the center as the scales get stuff put on them by life. Those are the curveballs. We're holding in the center, and although the scales may be doing this, we are centered. That we're not tipping over as that one side gets heavier, or we're tipping over into this one as that one gets, you know, more added to its plate. Life is constant movement. Jobs shift, relationship dynamics change. Global news has cycles, and we also experience our own inner moods in the midst of all of that. And if we hinge our peace on everything out there to settle down, that like those scales are perfectly weighted equally, we'll always feel off balance. Samatvam teaches us to cultivate an inner anchor. So no matter what's happening externally, we can remain steady internally. Think of it as your spiritual center of gravity. As my dear beloved teacher Ranaswami likes to say, it's like surfing. The waves are coming, and the surfer has to find balance on that surfboard in order to ride the wave. They're not overcome by the rushing of the water. They're not paralyzed in fear at how big the wave might be. And they're not too far out on one side of the board or the other side of the board. Sometimes they can shift to one side or the other, or walk all the way to the nose, but there has to be a certain awareness around the situation to find that balance and to be able to be out in those places. So we learn to ride the waves. Every wave is different, and where we position ourselves on our, sort of, to go with my analogy, on our surfboard, will depend on the kind of wave that we're riding. It's not always going to look the same. We might have more freedom and more liberty and more fun on a particular wave in life. Some waves really require a lot more focus and steadiness so that we don't get crushed underneath that giant wave. So think of Samatvam and this idea of equanimity as really your center of gravity. Another point I want to emphasize here is don't swing wildly with success or failure. The same goes for compliments and criticisms. Modern culture glorifies the highs, the achievements, the likes, the recognitions, and it doesn't mean that we can't enjoy those moments, but we don't swing wildly out into them and hinge our whole worth based on that wild swing out into it. Okay? And our society also will dramatize the lows, the rejections, the losses, the mistakes. And equanimity is really the reminder that neither of those ebbs and flows define you. How you walk through those moments, how you show up through those moments, how you make choices in those moments is what defines you. Not these extreme swings to those polar edges. Okay? So equanimity is the reminder that neither of those wildly swinging out edges define us, but we want to celebrate joyfully, we want to grieve honestly, but don't let either of the edges pull you so far off center that you forget who you are. Yoga invites you to stay rooted in your essence and not in your circumstances. Another benefit of Samatvam, this equanimity, we might use this word neutrality, but it doesn't mean to just be neutral like you're disassociating or that you don't care. Okay? So That's not what I mean by neutrality. But this idea of centeredness or neutrality creates clarity in our decision making. When emotions run high, it's easy to make reactive choices in relationships, in business, or even in conversations. Practicing neutrality or centeredness doesn't mean that you don't care. It means that you pause, that you breathe, and that you see the full picture. In a world of constant urgency and noise, neutrality gives you the space to respond with wisdom rather than impulse. It gives you an opportunity to be thoughtful in what you're going to do, how you're going to show up, and who you're going to be in that moment. So neutrality isn't a place that we settle so that we do nothing. But neutrality, think of that equanimity, that center spiritual of gravity, that neutral place where we're not out wildly in the edges, but we're here at center. So that from that centered place, we can walk into the next steps that we need to walk into, make the choices that we need to make, rather than being way out in the edges and making choices from there. I'm not saying that that's wrong. What I'm teaching you is what the Bhagavad Gītā is saying, is that this ability to walk equipoised, not attached to success or failure, is yoga. And it doesn't mean that we're going to do it perfect, and it doesn't mean that the world is going to be a perfectly peaceful place when we all do that. What it does mean is that we navigate our life differently when we can try as best as we can to apply these concepts. I recommend starting with the small things in life and not the big, big, big challenges of life, to try to apply these things right away. You can, but I recommend, if this is new to you or if it's a difficult concept to you, how do I have equanimity here? Just think of it as doing your best to not go way out into the edges where we get pulled out into reactive modes. So that we're not acting from impulse, but that we are acting from insight. My next point that I like to make is this idea of balance or centeredness that is implied with equanimity really is strength. Okay, it's not indifference. Some mistake equanimity for apathy. If I'm balanced, it means I don't care. That's not what we're talking about here. In truth, balance really requires self-awareness, courage, and engagement. It takes far more strength to stay centered in the middle of conflict, chaos, or temptation than it does to be swept away by the extremes. Samatvam is an active presence, being fully engaged while not consumed. And my last point here is that true yoga is the art of being centered everywhere. Yoga isn't just a posture on the mat. It's such a small, tiny fraction. Right? It's a posture of the mind. Equanimity is not something that we switch on only during meditation. It's how we hold ourselves in traffic, how we hold ourselves in arguments, how we hold ourselves in boardrooms and at our dinner tables, and with our kids as they're struggling with their schoolwork or avoiding their schoolwork. It's how we hold ourselves in those difficult one-to-one dialogues, how we hold ourselves as we navigate that. True yoga means living in such a way that wherever you are steady, centered, and aligned. And just like depending on what gets put on those scales as you hold them, or depending on the current that's happening in the ocean as you're surfing those waves, your steadiness and your centeredness and your alignedness is going to look different in each moment. So it doesn't always mean that you're the super peaceful one who is, never agitated. You may be in agitation and noticing your agitation and working towards centeredness in that frustration, in that agitation, in that hurt. So I don't want you to think that this idea of Samatvam is like ideally this is the goal that we might all work towards, is that, we look peaceful and graceful in everything that we do. But I want you to know that as things arise, as anger arises, as hurt arises, as grief arises, as excitement arises, Samatvam is feeling all of that, and in the midst of it, staying steady, staying centered and aligned as best as you can with that energy that you're in. This is a practice, not a perfect. And ultimately, the more we practice it, the better we get at navigating that place of center as we are walking through a life that is full of curveballs, full of extremes, full of stuff that is going to pull us out into our edges. So what are like some really just simple things that you can think about, and like, how do I apply this? What does this look like on the day-to-day? Like, what does it actually look like? Just some short, simple things that you can keep in mind is, in success, stay humble. And in difficulty, stay steady. Use your breath, right? Conscious, intentional breath to return to center, to regulate your system in any moment. That's it. We can just start there. In success, stay humble, stay grateful, stay grounded. And in difficulty, stay steady, stay grounded, stay persistent. And when we are feeling those wild swings out into the edges, we're going to use our breath to do the best we can to return back to center and to regulate ourselves as that energy is vacillating through us. So here are some reflective questions, because transformation requires application, and I really want you to think about your life in this context. Where in your life do you lose your center most easily? And what helps you return to center? Just, I'm sure you would know, top of mind, like, yeah, for sure. If somebody says this thing to me, I definitely lose my center. Or if my expectations aren't met, I lose my center. If I don't succeed when I was hoping to succeed, I lose my center. My kids talking back to me, I lose my center. You know what it is, but I want you to be real honest with yourself and like just take note. Where in life do I lose my center most easily? And in that moment, what would help me return to center? Okay, so ask yourself, what situations test your equanimity? What anchors help you stay calm? And what would life feel like if you lived more center and less in the edges or the extremes? Well, I can tell you from my experience, when you do live more centered and less in the edges or the extremes, you have less drama and you move more toward your dreams. So my encouragement for you with this video and this topic, these philosophical concepts that come from the Bhagavad Gītā, is balance doesn't mean lifelessness. It means strength. Balance doesn't mean perfect or completely still. It's an active state of being, holding it all while maintaining steady at center as best as you can. If you'd like to do a deeper dive on this very powerful topic, I will drop the journal prompts that I mentioned here down below in the description box. But you can also click the link that I'll post down below and join my Empowered Living community platform, which is free, by the way, where you can access all of my Monday messages and the PDF journal download that goes a little bit deeper into each of these topics. So you can click that link, become a member, it's totally free, and you can get all the PDFs, they exist there on that platform. And in closing, I'd like to leave you with this thought. Equanimity is yoga. That's what Krishna says in the end of this verse, chapter 2, verse 48. Samatvam yoga ucyate. This equanimity is yoga. So equanimity is yoga. Return to your center, and you'll find freedom no matter what arises. You'll find grace no matter what is arising. And you'll find that as those curveballs are coming at you, you're able to walk that nice, steady line with much more ease. All right, my friend, if you enjoyed this Monday message, please do me a big favor and hit that like button down below. And don't forget to subscribe so that every time I post a new Monday message, you get notified. And when you do those things, it also boosts me in the algorithm so other yogis and seekers may find me in their YouTube feed. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sending you so much love and really encouraging you to do as Krishna said, equipoised. Go out into the world and do your life without attachment to success or failure. This equanimity is yoga. And if you're finding that difficult to do, join us at the studio. Take a class, get on your mat, and learn in real time what it means to stay centered and equipoised as you are in the midst of the challenges. The more you practice it, the more you're able to access it. The more you're able to access it, the more it just becomes like your second nature. It just becomes how you walk through life. And your life, the way you're experiencing life, and the experiences that come to you in life will change the more you start to practice this. All right, sending you so much love from my heart to yours. Happy Monday. I hope you have a beautiful week. And I'll see you next time. Namaste.